Welcome and thanks for attending our event. My name is Samuel Smith and I'm running to represent Mesquite, South Garland, and East Dallas in the Texas House to put principle over party and people over politics. I was born in East Dallas and raised in Cairo, Egypt during my middle and high school years, during which time I got to travel all over the world and experience numerous cultures and worldviews. I had the opportunity to attend the United States Military Academy at West Point, graduate with a double major in civil engineering and applied mathematics, served and deployed as an Army officer, and since then I have moved back to the DFW area, worked in land development and project management, and now have started my own investment research business, and I live in Mesquite with my wife and 3 children. Tonight we're going to be talking to you about how to fight against our out-of-control property taxes that have been especially hitting our district hard over the last several years. First, we're going to hear from Cheryl Johnson, a county tax assessor collector, and she's going to be sharing with you some tips on how to effectively protest your property taxes to minimize over appraisals on your property and minimize your property tax bill. And then second, we're going to be hearing from a gentleman named Joe Palmer from a group called Eliminate Property Tax, and he's going to be introducing to you a legislative proposal that would actually enable us to fully eliminate property taxes altogether and replace it in a revenue neutral manner with a consumption tax. Now, I'm sure that may spark a lot of questions in your mind, and Cheryl's presentation may as well. So feel free to leave questions. In fact, we encourage you to ask questions. Leave them in the comment section below, and one of us will be happy to get back to you as soon as possible to answer your question. Before we get to those speakers, though, I'd like to show you a brief video that outlines my position on property taxes as well. Thank you.
Property taxes are out of control. Dallas County Appraisal District data show that between 2013 and 2018, property taxes have surged by over 50%. In Mesquite, city property taxes have risen by a whopping 77%. And in Garland ISD, homeowners saw their property tax bill rise by 74% during those 5 years. In Highland Park and Highland Park ISD, the average property tax bill in 2018 was a whopping $23,000. This type of taxation promotes homelessness and financial hardship, unjustly oppresses the poor and middle class by forcing renters to pay a higher property tax rate since rental properties lack a homestead exemption, subjects us to an ever-increasing tax burden that is determined by unelected bureaucrats, discourages home and community improvement, and worst of all, denies us true freedom by preventing us from ever being able to actually own our own homes. My name is Samuel Smith. I am a husband and a father, a Christian, a West Point graduate and Army veteran, and a small business owner in Mesquite. I am running to represent District 107 in the Texas House of Representatives to be an unwavering voice against these immoral and oppressive property taxes. I have pledged to refuse a salary and pension while in office because I believe that politicians should not be making money while Texans are being squeezed by these oppressive property taxes. While both parties continue to be all talk and no action on this important issue that impacts the well-being of every Texan, we need a representative that will make this issue a priority and give voice to the demands of we the people. The time has come for people of all ethnicities, religions, and political affiliations to unite and stand for the fundamental truth that we are not truly free if we do not actually own our own homes. Property taxes crush the poor and middle class and have no place in a free society. We can replace the property tax with a fair, flat, and revenue-neutral consumption tax that protects the poor and restores tax accountability and transparency. To learn more and join our movement, visit us at www.samuelsmithfortexas.org. I look forward to earning your vote.
I'm Cheryl Johnson. I am Galveston County Tax Assessor Collector, and I've been teaching this class to the citizens across the state of Texas for about the last 16 years. And I'm pleased that you have taken the time to learn how to protest your property value. This class is broken into multiple pieces so that you can view each section or view it in its entirety. Right now, I'm going to cover the highlights of the process. Everything that I cover in this class is included in the booklet that is posted on my website at www.galcotax.com, including a spreadsheet that's created to help you work through the process. By now, you've either filed an online protest or requested a formal appraisal review board hearing via the mail. My focus today is to prepare you for that ARB hearing. I'm assuming you've downloaded or printed the protest booklet. There's a lot of information, particularly in the first page, that covers basic process that I'm not going to go into in this program. You filed an online protest and you are waiting to receive an offer in order to determine whether to go to the ARB, accept the offer, or ignore it. For my daughter, we are now analyzing that from Harris County to determine whether it's in her best interest to accept the online offer or not. You filed an online, rejected the offer, and requested a formal ARB hearing, in which case you're probably still waiting to hear when you're going to be scheduled, or you filed a formal protest in writing and you're waiting to be scheduled for the ARB. And I'm hoping that you have requested and received your documents, which would be the sales, the appraisal card, and so forth, and you'll see a sample of those coming up. I'm also assuming you have verified that the information that the CAD has on your property is accurate. That if you've received the documents, that you've researched the sales to ensure that they represent true market value and there's no unusual conditions associated with those sales. That you have tried to locate other sales and found or if you're in a subdivision, found identical properties for an unequal appraisal protest. You have gathered evidence to support your reduction, and if you're already scheduled for an ARB hearing, I'm hoping that you will take advantage of your right to a one-time reschedule in order to be fully prepared. This is the typical documents that you would receive, and this is what I received back in 2016 when I requested the formal documents. You'll have a cover letter. This is an appraisal card. You'll hear me refer to this often. The difference between this and what you'll see online is the sketch, and you are going to want to verify that all those measurements are accurate. Also is all the detailed information, including the depreciation and the condition of your property. So basically all of your information that I talk about can be found on this card. This is a neighborhood map, and this is the subject that is in the booklet, and this is actually my property. This is an aerial that Galveston provides. You'll also receive a comp sheet, and the comp sheet, they're going to take some of the houses in your neighborhood they consider most like your property. This is in fact every house in my neighborhood, and put a listing together for you. This also provides the same information on the appraisal card without the sketch, showing the condition and so forth, and that's very beneficial when you're doing your analysis. You're also going to receive an uniform and equal comp report. This is basically the ones that they then pick from that other list to be most comparable to see if I'm uniform and equal as compared to other properties. And this is the sales. This is what the sales look like from Galveston County. Amazingly, there were only 2 sales in 2016 that were used to increase my value by 42%. This is a notice of ARB hearing. So once you have asked for your formal protest, you will receive a letter similar to this. This may be delivered certified mail at your request, and that you will have to pay for the postage for that by email or through regular mail. This must be received and provided 14 days before the hearing. You must also receive all the documents 14 days before the hearing if they've not already been provided to you. This is a blow-up from that letter, and it says, if you have not had an informal conference with an appraiser and wish to do so, make arrangements to arrive early so you would have an informal conference. The online protest is typically considered the informal. Do check with your appraisal district. In Galveston, even if you've had the online, they're not counting that as an informal, and everybody is being allowed to meet informally with an appraiser before the ARB hearing. Arrive early enough to attend that. That's really important. If you do not reach an agreement with the appraiser in the informal, you will proceed to the ARB hearing. In Galveston, that's either in person or via video located within the building. Do check with your CAD on that. So what do you expect at that ARB hearing? The chairman's going to start the hearing. It will be recorded. The entire process will take no more than about 20 minutes. You want to keep your part to 5 minutes, typically as a maximum, although you will have time for questions at the end. The chair will verify that you have not spoken to any members of the panel about your property value. All the parties will be welcomed. The procedures that will be followed will be covered. And if you have any witnesses, for example, you might take a real estate appraiser with you. They're going to ask for their credentials. The chair will ask who wishes to present first. For a personal standpoint, I like to hear what the other side has to say first, so I can present my side of the story and then refute theirs. This does not mean that you will not have an opportunity to refute what the CAD says anyway, but I like to hear what they have to say first. The chair will swear everyone in once that decision is made, and you will be asked the nature of your protest. What they mean by this is, are you protesting based on market value, unequal value, or both? When you're presenting your case, you want to be clear and concise. 5 minutes is a very short time frame, so you want to practice your presentation and what you intend to say. Don't be chatty in the beginning and lose your 5 minutes. Get right to the point. I would thank the ARB for hearing you and let them know if you received an online informal or the appraiser had offered you a reduction, that they offered you, say, $10,000, but you thought it should be $20,000 for this reason. You want to be persuasive, not argumentative. The CAD has the burden of proof, so if there's any doubt, the ARB should rule in your favor, and it is not a bad idea for you to suggest, after hearing the CAD data, that they have not met their legal requirement of providing the value by preponderance of the evidence. This section of code that's referenced, 4143, is in the booklet. The ARB may ask questions and then they'll make a decision. It may reduce the value or do nothing. It can no longer increase the value, which is to your benefit. You'll receive formal notification of the ARB decision along with the information explaining your options. So those options are, if you're not happy with the ARB decision, you can request arbitration, which will require a $450 deposit at a minimum, or you may file a lawsuit in district court. If you have a lawyer in your family and you can bear the agony of a lawsuit or going through that legal process, it's very unlikely you would ever make it to court, and you will typically go to mediation, and those values tend to be far more successful, those protests, than arbitration, but you have to be prepared for that agony and potentially some expense. Arbitration is covered on page 4 of the booklet, and there is a video that I give you a link to also. I encourage you strongly to watch that. I'm now going to move into preparation for being prepared for your protest in the market value process. So CAD's determined value is of January 1 based on the market value. And what that is, which is critical to your protest, is the price a property would sell for if exposed for sale a reasonable time, and that changes depending on the area that you're in. All parties are aware of the uses and restrictions of the property. It's really awful when you buy a piece of property and you find out what you thought you could use it for, you can't, and that would be justification for you having overpaid. And neither is taking advantage of the other or highly motivated. So in the instance of the community I live in, we have price wars going on. Those are typically highly motivated buyers, and those sales should not be used because they do not represent market value. You're going to have to prove that. True market value only exists at one point in time on a property, and that's when it's sold under normal market conditions, when the buyer and the seller have a meeting of the minds on what the value is. Until then, it's a value range. When we're selling our properties, they're castles, and as they should be. When it comes to paying taxes, you want to be valued at the very bottom of that range, and quite frankly, if you're not comfortable with saying that you live in a dump when you protest your property values, don't count on successful appeal. You want to be willing to throw your property under the bus and let them know how awful it is. Your evidence package is going to be really important, and you're going to take this to the ARB hearing. You're going to bring 4 copies to give to them. You're going to need one for yourself. And there might be other items you add, but at a minimum, you want to put your appraisal notice in there, your appraisal card, any photographs you have at the property, photographs of needed repairs, and a summary of any bids or receipts that you have showing any expenses you had. You do not have to give them all of your bids and all of your receipts. A plat map showing the sales, listings, and foreclosures. That will be particularly important next year. And if you're taking other sales, you want to take any documentation to validate it. So perhaps if a real estate agent shared that with you, their cover email to show that it was a valid sale. And if you have it, a recent appraisal. Although it must meet the requirements that are specified in the book, the appraisal must be a USPAP approved appraisal. The first thing you're going to know is, what are they comparing you to? CADs define areas to gather sales. They're doing mass appraisal. And this area that they're defining is your neighborhood. So anytime a sale occurs within your neighborhood, those are put into the database, and a statistical analysis is done to increase your value. So they're not picking on you, but there were sales in your neighborhood which caused them to increase your value. Some properties in your neighborhood are more comparable than others, and you want to be prepared to explain why. In my particular property, I live on Clear Creek, and half of the properties in my neighborhood are on the creek and frequently flood, where the properties on the other side of the street do not. So there's benefit to explaining that to the CAD. You maybe have an area where there's a power line running through the back of the property. That would be important to point out to them. You want to be aware of the influences impact value, such as easements, or traffic, or crime, or drainage or flooding issues. In Galveston County, plat maps and neighborhood maps are available on the website and probably in your county as well. The plat map is the black and white, and the neighborhood map is the color one. In the neighborhood map in this instance, I can only be compared to properties in that pink or purple area. The ARB chairman will ask, what's the nature of your protest? What does that mean? Are you protesting because of incorrect market value, meaning the CAD had bad data or comps? There's repairs or renovations that are needed to bring your property up to market standards, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Or are you protesting for unequal appraisal, or are you protesting for both? If you say both, you must prove both. If you're protesting for market value, you're going to focus on three types of depreciation. Physical is wear and tear on the property. So anything that's wrong, if you have a foundation problem, you want to bring photographs of that and an estimate of the repair. Economic is when you're in an area where there's a lot of foreclosures or excessive properties for sale. This will likely occur next year rather than this year. Remember, your value is determined as of January 1st, so the economic conditions happening today are not going to affect you this year. Functional means that you have overbuilt your property or you have a poor floor plan. You want to determine the cost to cure that. For example, if you added on a room to your house and you now have to go from one room through it to the addition that you've done, that is a functional floor plan deficiency, and the cost to cure that would be what would it cost you to add a hallway and doors to access both different rooms. If repairs are needed, you want to include photos and repair estimates. If you need to bring your property up to market standards, you want to use information found on properties for sale or recently sold and create a side-by-side comparison. So I'm going to show you one. So the CAD used when my house was sold, one of the sales, as you see on the left, the very nice living room is the sale that they were trying to compare to my living room on the right. As you can see, there's a stone focus wall. There is an excessive amount of wood trim. The windows are very nicely detailed, a lot of exposed beams, the tile, and where my house, nothing wrong with it, but it is obviously not the same quality of construction as the sale that they were using. And here's the kitchen, and this is a great difference between them. The sale had a very large kitchen with granite countertops, an island with a Genair range, and a vent hood, double wall ovens, multiple sinks, and particularly that granite countertop added a lot. Now there's oversized appliances in there as well, but that's what I would call minimally an upscale kitchen. And when you look at my property, there's nothing wrong with that kitchen, but it is a drop range. It's not built in. There's no Genair. Very basic, functional, but basic, and there's not a bit of granite in this kitchen. And here's the master bath. In the middle of the pictures of the sale that they tried to compare me to. As you can see, they have expensive casement windows. Again, they're framed, trimmed out. They have a jacuzzi tub with jets, and you can see the shower is fully tiled with glass enclosure. And you don't see the commode, which, as you can see on my property, in homes today, they're tending to put those into closets, and mine is not. So I have a prefab shower and a standard tub. Vast difference between these two bathrooms. So how am I going to show them what the cost is to bring my property up to the properties they're comparing me to? In the booklet, you'll find a website, homewise.com, and this is a great method of obtaining estimates of renovations and repairs in order to bring your property up to the standard. So if you click on projects, I was looking at kitchen remodeling, so I clicked on upscale kitchen remodeling. And when you slide the little bar at the bottom and adjust that for the square footage, it's going to change the value ranges, the low and high, of creating an upscale kitchen. Now, one thing that is not included here is the demolition cost. Demolition is going to run you $5,000 to $10,000 to not just take everything out without destroying everything, but also to dispose of the waste, and that is not factored into this. Then we want to look at the upscale bathroom remodeling. Same thing, you do that little slide bar, you slide it the direction of the square footage of your bathroom that you're wanting to remodel, and you'll get the low and the high end. Just screenshotting these as well as those photographs, great evidence for the ARB. Then I took this and I put together a list. I had a friendly realtor go through my house and tell me what I needed to do. So she told me I needed to refinish my floors, I needed to update some of my landscaping, I needed to do some painting, and of course the kitchen and master bathroom remodel, and then miscellaneous little things. So the starred items are actually repairs. That totaled $7,500. The renovation, $70,000. So I took this list to the CAD along with those other photographs that you've seen. The appraiser applied the repairs to depreciation, and I'm going to show you a calculator here in just a moment to determine what that total percentage of depreciation is on my property. Then they took those other items and realized that the classification code of my property was too high, and they lowered it. In the booklet, I believe on page 7 or 8, you will see classification codes, and that is the greatest determination of what the price per square foot is of your property. So this is the depreciation calculator. This is included in the spreadsheet. So you enter the cost of the repairs and just your improvement value, not your land value, and the spreadsheet will calculate your actual depreciation. What the CADs do is they don't use the 6% depreciation. They say, what is the percent good of the property? Now we're going to discuss an unequal value protest. In an unequal value protest, you're trying to determine whether your property is out of line on a price per square foot when compared to similar properties in the neighborhood. And so you can use all the properties on your street. What I like to look for if you're in a subdivision are identical houses, because when a builder comes in and develops an area, they build the same house again and again. They just flip the garage. They just flip the floor plan, but they're identical houses. You want to locate those. You want to take pictures of them, and then you're going to research them and adjust the value using the protest worksheet. This is a neighborhood that I use. All of those colors are a subdivision called the Forest of Friendswood. Now, I did not need to stick to my specific neighborhood. I could go anywhere in the subdivision, although there might be some adjustments I have to make for age. But the goal was to find identical houses. So I've decided to pick this 409 Meadow Run, where the star is determine whether that one is overvalued. And as you can see in looking at these, they might be flipped. The Meadow Court and the Meadow Bend properties are flipped. They're just the opposite, but they're the identical house. Different color brick, different landscaping, but that is it. But you can see there's somewhat of a range in value here. So is my house $384,000? Is it $381,000, or is it closer to the $390,000? So I went to the CAD website, which I'm going to show you Galveston in just a moment, and I listed the differences in the property. The 302 Meadow Court has a pool, it has a smaller garage, and a similar lot size. 305 Meadow Court has a large pool, an identical breezeway, a somewhat smaller garage, but it has a much larger lot. 401 Meadow Bend has a pool and a smaller garage and a very similar but smaller lot. So using the protest worksheet, and the instructions are in the spreadsheet in the middle of the booklet as well as in the spreadsheet, but you're going to take that information and you're going to enter it into the worksheet. All of the information used in this example of improvements listing, the improvements listing is both in the book and in the spreadsheet, was obtained in less than 10 minutes online. So although it looks like a great deal of work, it was not that hard. I simply looked up each one of these properties and then pulled all that information from the Galveston Appraisal website. Your appraisal district has the same information. So this is the home page. And when you click on those different bars, the values, the improvement building, and the land, all the details of the property come up. So the information from the CAD website, property page at the right, was used to complete the improvements listing. So there's the improvements value. There's the main area square footage and the improvement value. There's the lot square footage and the value of the lot. The classification code, which I talked about earlier, and you can see all of these are exactly the same. The effective age or the year built. And then the other improvements, all the detail. Now, the other properties had a secondary improvement. One of them had a third improvement. So you would just click on other improvements to find the other improvements. Each one of these sections includes the improvements specific to those things that are showing. So I took all the information from the improvements listing and entered it into the protest worksheet. That's in the spreadsheet in a tab called Spreadsheet for You. And as you enter the information into the white cells, the gray cells will calculate. For an unequal protest, I did not, because these were the same classification, I determined that quality did not need to be adjusted. So I did delete those formulas, and you would want to do that so that you don't end up with the comparables being adjusted to yours. However, when you look at this listing on the price per square foot of the main area, you can see that the subject property is a little bit higher per square foot. This might be enough for the ARB to lower your value to one of the more reasonable values. In this instance, then, when you're comparing it, all the calculations are going to perform. And so the gray cells are calculating, and then you're going to end up with an adjusted value. I always put the high end in that indicated value range, put the high one, and then I analyze what properties are most like mine. The pink cells, I highlighted those to show where the differences are. And when I looked at the overall value change, it appeared as though property number 2, that only required $80 worth of adjustments, was most like mine. So that was the one that I focused on. Now, obviously, at $381,000 compared to my $384,000, my value is somewhat overpriced. Now, next year, with the few number of people that protest, you might have a much stronger unequal value, or all the people that don't protest this year are going to have a very strong unequal protest. And I've already gone through showing the pink cells in this example, showing the differences. So spend some time looking at this. At the bottom of that spreadsheet are the formulas of what's actually happening, so you can see what's occurring. The improvements listing is a tool. You're not going to want to necessarily give that to the appraisal district. You want to have it handy. It's a great tool to evaluate the differences when you're sitting down with the CAD and the ARB. And it also gives you a better picture into your property. The protest worksheet was built from that improvements worksheet. I just hid those rows that I did not need. And so same thing, I started with 11 sales. This was not the same sample that you just looked at. But in the comparable of my property, I had 11 different properties that I used, and I decided which ones had the most common elements to my property, and I highlighted those in yellow in order to determine what of the 11 to use. Only the properties considered to be comparable were included in the Plat Map and were used in the improvements listing that I include in the packet along with that analysis. So these are the final documents that you could include in the packet. Of course, the Plat Map, you want to show where those properties are. Now, I had told you I live on the creek, so you can see the boundaries of those properties that are very uneven. Those are the properties that front on Clear Creek. When you look at property number 7 and 8, they have no flood issues whatsoever. So definitely those properties are always going to be higher than the ones than those of us who have a flood condition. But in addition to these items, the Plat Map, the improvements listing, and that protest worksheet, you want to take that appraisal card, photos of your property, of the sales, and list of repairs and renovations. Now, in the analysis that's in the book in the middle of that book, these were all the properties. So this shows why I did not use the ones that were not included. So I would take this as a tool to the CAD in order, if they say, well, what about the neighbor beside you, which is number 2? Well, that property required $317,000 worth of adjustment. And each one of these other ones required too many adjustments. Now, if you unhide the cells in the spreadsheet, you'll see the details on these, and then you can logically see why I did not use these. Now I'm going to discuss what to do if you're not happy with the ARB when they make your determination. So your options, if you're not happy with the ARB decision, is to file for arbitration or to file a lawsuit. Lawsuits rarely go to court, but it could be costly. Now, if you're lucky enough to have a lawyer in the family or you are a lawyer, this is a good option. You just pay the court costs, which could be less than the cost of arbitration. You're going to end up in mediation. So you will rarely go to court because the CAD's not going to want to spend that money and they will settle with you. Arbitration costs are on a sliding scale based on the value, and they start at $450. That's pretty expensive for a lot of people to spend to go to arbitration. So you want to analyze the difference between the ARB offer or the offer that they're making, that they have made, or in the online protest. Is the amount of money you're going to save going to be more or less than this? Don't spend money that you're not going to save. But in arbitration, an unbiased third party will hear your case in a neutral location. So you're not going to be under the roof of the CAD. So this is always to your favor. And they're typically real estate professionals. These are highly trained professionals that are going to listen well and they don't have a horse in the race. So they're going to really listen to all the details that you have. Should the arbitrator's value be at least $1 closer to your opinion of what the value is, so you want to be reasonable, than what the ARB's determination is, you will be refunded all but the $50 administrative fee, and the CAD will pay the balance. Definitely read the information in the handout on the ARBs. About the only thing good that I can say about going to the ARB, going to arbitration, and going to a court of law is these formal processes will prevent your property from increasing next year without clear and convincing evidence in the possession of the CAD. So it's not likely that you'll have to go through this next year. The Comptroller's website has a great resource, Beginning Arbitration for Beginners. This is included, the web link is included on page 4 in the booklet. What are your other options? At any point in time, you can hire a property tax consultant. And you might want to do that if you're going to the ARB and you are uncomfortable with that. Definitely take a consultant or take a friend who's a real estate agent or a lawyer with you if you decide to proceed to arbitration if you've never done it before. Do understand if you hire a property tax consultant, they're going to charge you a percentage of your savings rather than typically a flat fee. But the longer you wait, the harder it's going to be to find one who's available. In my booklet, I include a listing of ones in my area, the Houston-Galveston area, and that all I did was Google property tax consultants and allow the computer to search my location and came up with that list. So you're going to want to do that. If you're unhappy with the way you're treated by the ARB, you want to report that to the taxpayer liaison officer. This is a position that was created by statute to resolve customer disputes. Now, they're not going to necessarily get into value. They're more concerned with process. But any complaints that are received by them are reported to the CAD board. The ARB members can be removed by the CAD board or the state district administrative judge who appoints them for bias or misbehavior. And so it will be important if you have a problem with the ARB, if they were extraordinarily biased, if they were rude to you, to report them. We want those people removed. After the ARB hearing, you will be asked to complete an ARB survey. Please do this. Without you completing this survey, the legislature has no idea what your opinion is of this process. And I will tell you, the questions are very biased to be in the favor of the ARB. So be very brutally honest if you felt like you were rushed, if you felt like the odds were stacked against you, if you did not like that it was held in the CAD offices. That is important information to make sure the legislature sees. They only see this report once a year. If you have a concern regarding the CAD or an employee, you want to report it immediately to the chief appraiser or the deputy chief appraiser. You, after all, pay their salaries, and it's not appropriate for you to be treated badly. You want to write a letter or an email to the taxpayer liaison with a copy to the board chairman and the chief appraiser, and include your local elected officials to ensure that it gets the proper respect and attention. Mark Twain said the only difference between a taxman and a taxidermist is the taxidermist leaves the skin. Not every tax assessor collector has to be the bad guy. So although I am you people when you receive a bill from me in October, I am not you people during this process, and we are here for you. I hope you have an opinion that this taxman is better than the taxidermist stripping you of your skin.
Cheryl, could you please explain for us in a little more detail about the Homestead appraisal cap?
The first year you have your homestead, January 1st, will establish your value. And the way the 10% appraisal cap works, it doesn't prevent your value from increasing. it's going to reduce the amount that you're taxed from year to year. It does not stop your value from increasing. So, for example, I had mentioned my property went up 42%. So I got my property lowered by about 30%, but my taxes still went up that year because it was more than the 10% appraisal cap. So if your value went up from 2019 in this example from 300,000 to 400,000, you were taxed on the 300,000 last year. You'll be taxed on an additional 10% of the 300,000 this year, or 330, and so forth and so on. The following year, 10% of the 330, until you get to the full value of the 400,000 by 2023. You'll hear a lot of people talking about benefits of lowering the appraisal cap. If this was a 5% cap, it would take twice as long for these values to increase. So that is something that we're working on legislatively.
Thanks very much, Cheryl. Next, as I said earlier, we'll be hearing from Joe Palmer from Eliminate Property Tax. Joe?
Well, thank you for having me, Sam. As you said, I represent a group called Eliminate Property Tax. And for more information about our group, you can go to eliminatepropertytax.com. It is accurate that we are not interested in decreasing the funding for any of the systems of government that we've come to expect and demand from local and state government. We're just simply looking for a different tax to levy, a different way to fund those things that would be more efficient, that would be more morally acceptable, because really in Texas, when you have to pay rent on something that you own, and when that thing can be taken away from you for non-payment of taxes, you really don't own that thing. And what we're trying to do essentially is restore property ownership in the state of Texas. Now, we've never had true property ownership in the state of Texas since its inception. In fact, property taxes go all the way back to times before the formation of the United States of America, predates colonial times. So it is an uphill battle. It is a monumental task to go about eliminating the property tax system, but we are determined. And with your help and with the help of other candidates for office, as well as currently elected state officials, and as well as with the help of delegates to the most recent Republican state convention and the upcoming state convention, we're going to try to eliminate property taxes in our lifetime. And we think it's possible. We've had some good news. A couple of days ago at the Senate District 12 convention, which is a precursor convention to the state Republican Party convention, which is coming up next month in Houston, there was a resolution passed calling for the state legislature to eliminate the property tax system and replace it with a form of taxation other than an income tax. And so what that leaves, most realistically, is the consumption, which is basically the existing sales tax, but a broader application to include things that are not currently taxed, for example, services. And we believe this would be a much more efficient way to tax and pay for government, because you could greatly reduce the necessity for 254 appraisal district offices and 254 appraisal review boards. I maintain that there is no logical connection between the ownership of property, the ownership of a thing, the needs or wants of a local school district or city or county or special utility district, for that matter, or county hospital. And I'll illustrate that with the following example. If you had 10 acres, if you purchased 10 acres with no home on it, and you built a $100 million mansion, presumably your property tax bill could go up $2 or $3 million a year. Did the needs of the school district go up by $2 or $3 million the moment that house was finished, the moment the tax rolls? I would say no. What if you took a wrecking ball and knocked that house down the next year, and the value of that property went down $100 million? Would the needs of the county, the needs of the county hospital, go down by $2 or $3 million? The answer is obviously no. So you see, there is no logical connection between the value of your property and how we fund our local government. Talking about the way forward, and how we got to where we are right now. We've had a couple of bills in the legislature. One was filed by George Lavender from East, who's no longer serving. And we also had 2 sessions ago, House Bill 1050 from State Representative Valerie Swanson. The challenge that we've faced so far with legislative efforts has been what other good, solid bills have found, and that is that to work through the process, they either get out of committee or they get out of committee and the committee does not put them on the calendar to get to the House floor, or if it makes it through the committee and it makes it onto the calendar committee, which is the committee that schedules it for the House or for the floor, it could run out of time. They do that within the last few weeks of the session. There's no guarantee that it will ever be heard. So we have had efforts, and we are making progress. But going forward, we are going to take this resolution that we've gotten out of SD 12, and I think it's come through other Senate districts, and we are going to try to get that into the Republican Party state platform, which is a document that helps us articulate to the world what it is that we believe. And once that is in place, that gives our Republican legislators the ability to, it gives them cover and says, well, this is what the party wants. And the Republican Party of Texas convention every 2 years is the world's largest political gathering. We had something like 8,000 delegates to the most recent state convention. So 90% of those delegates agreed that we need to eliminate tax forever and restore home ownership, restore property ownership in Texas. If not Texas, where should that happen? We really have the opportunity to lead on this issue. And I think if we are successful in eliminating property taxes, that other states will follow, and it could change the country, quite honestly.
Thanks very much for that, Joe. And thanks very much, everyone, for attending tonight. Like I said earlier, we have a huge problem with property taxes in our district. And so if you want to see something done about this and you were encouraged by what you heard tonight, and you live in District 107 or know someone who lives there, I'm your candidate. And with that, I ask for your support on November 3rd. I also ask for those, whether you live in this district or not, to get involved, find a way that you can help make a difference for all of us here in Texas so that we can eventually move towards a point where we can actually own our own homes. Thank you very much. God bless.